I've always had a goal to hit 1,000 likes on a video, but you legends smashed past that and got one of my videos to over 2K likes. Let's break even more records on this video. Please smash that like button. And I want to try this one thing. I want to know who my devoted listeners are. So once you've done that, comment down below that you hit that like button hard, or even a kind message. Let's see who our loyal devoted viewers are. You know who you are. Once again, thank you guys so much. Now to these amazing stories. This is a dating horror story that I'll never forget. I don't even know where to begin because, honestly, when it happened, I just thought it was some weird fluke. But then I kept thinking about it and realized it wasn't just a fluke. It was a nightmare that lasted an entire evening. So, Priyanka and I met on a dating app. I know, it sounds pretty cliche. We had some casual conversations over text, and honestly, things seemed normal. We had a few things in common, and she seemed cool enough. She was one of those people who was pretty laid back, but not overly so. We both liked similar music, food, and movies, so I figured, why not? Let's meet up. We decided to meet at this nice Indian fusion restaurant in the city. It was one of those places with dim lights, fancy decor, and a pretty chill vibe. I was excited. We were both into trying new things, so it seemed like a solid choice. What I didn't expect, though, was what happened when she showed up. So Priyanka walks in, and I'm thinking, okay, she looks pretty good, just like in her photos. But here's the weird part. She wasn't alone. Her dad was with her. I'll admit I was thrown off for a second, but I figured maybe she was just being cautious. Some people like having a bit of family support, right? I didn't want to be rude, so I waved them both over to the table. Her dad sat down across from me, and Priyanka sat next to him. At first, I thought he was just going to hang out for a bit, maybe have a drink, and then leave them to it. But no, he stayed for the entire date. The weirdest part. He immediately started grilling me. I had no idea what was going on. I mean, it wasn't just small talk. He was asking me everything. Where I worked, how much I made, what my career goals were, how long I've been dating, if I was close with my family, my long-term plans, everything. The dude wasn't holding back, and I'm just sitting there, trying to stay cool and answer all his questions like it was totally normal. I couldn't tell if Priyanka was uncomfortable or if this was just the way things went with her family, but she didn't say much. She just sat there, poking at her food. Her dad's questions didn't stop. It started getting more personal. Like, how serious are you about this relationship? And what's your view on marriage? Do you think it's necessary? I was seriously wondering if this was some kind of interview for a job or a relationship. I had never been in a situation like this. The guy didn't even look at the menu, just kept asking questions. The waiters passed by multiple times, but we hadn't even ordered yet. I was just sitting there in this incredibly awkward silence, trying to keep it together while Priyanka's dad grilled me like I was applying for a position I didn't even know existed. I remember at one point, he leaned in and said something like, "Are you sure you're the right guy for my daughter? Because you don't seem like the type to handle a family like ours." I mean, what does that even mean? I wasn't even sure what he meant by the type. I tried laughing it off because I honestly didn't know how else to react, but it wasn't funny. It wasn't even close. Through the entire meal, Priyanka just sat there, not saying a word. She barely even looked up. Every now and then, she would glance at her phone, but that was it. No real conversation with me, no real attempt to diffuse the tension her dad was creating. It was like I was invisible to her, and her dad was the only one who mattered. I couldn't believe it was happening. Finally, after what felt like hours, we got our food. I wasn't even hungry anymore, to be honest, but I thought maybe now we could at least try to salvage the date. We were halfway through dinner when her dad did something that made my stomach drop. Without any warning, he took off his shoe and chucked it across the table at me. It wasn't a light toss, either. He threw it like he was aiming for my head. I barely managed to dodge it, but it hit the edge of my plate, sending food everywhere. The entire restaurant went quiet for a second, and I just sat there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. My mind was racing, and I honestly thought I was going to pass out from shock. Priyanka didn't even react. Her dad sat there, all calm, like this was no big deal. He just looked at me and said, "If you're not tough enough to handle my daughter and her family, then maybe you should leave." He didn't even apologize or explain himself. He just stared at me, waiting for my response. At this point, I had no idea what to do. I felt humiliated, confused, and honestly kind of scared. I knew this wasn't normal, but I didn't know how to get out of this mess. I started gathering my stuff, and Priyanka still hadn't said a word. She didn't look upset, didn't look sorry, just looked blank. I grabbed my coat and started heading for the door, but as I was leaving, I glanced back one last time. Priyanka was still sitting there, her dad already looking for the check, like the whole thing hadn't just turned into some weird family interrogation with a side of violence. I was shaken up, and honestly, I didn't know what I'd just gotten myself into. As I stepped out into the street, I couldn't help but think how strange and disturbing that whole date was. It felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from, but at least I was out of there, and after that, I never heard from Priyanka again. I still don't know what that was all about, but I'll tell you one thing. I'd never expected a first date to end with someone throwing their shoe at me, and I definitely never expected that it'd be the last time I'd hear from the person I was supposedly dating. I met Zach through a mutual friend at a small birthday dinner. It wasn't anything special, just 8 of us squeezed into a corner booth at a loud Italian restaurant, all talking over each other and passing plates around. Zach sat next to me. He was decent looking, dressed normal, made some pretty funny comments under his breath during the meal that made me laugh. I wouldn't say I was blown away or anything, but he seemed solid. Easy to talk to, decent energy, not trying too hard. After that, he followed me on Instagram and sent a message that night. Things moved pretty quickly from there. Within a week, we were texting every day, FaceTiming at night, going out for drinks after work. He was charming in this kind of low-effort way. Not overly romantic, but always just sweet enough to keep me interested. The type to send memes and ask how my day was going, but not so into it that it felt clingy. Honestly, it felt like the pace I needed at the time. Chill. Simple. I work in tech at this mid-sized company that's always hiring, but also super picky about who gets in. It's not some dream job, but the pay is good, the benefits are solid, and it's one of those places where once you're in, you're kind of set for a while. Zach asked where I worked pretty early on, and when I told him, he immediately lit up. Said he'd heard about it, said he'd applied once but never heard back. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Everyone wants a better job, right? A few dates in, maybe 2 weeks after we started hanging out, he brought it up again. Said he was looking to switch companies and asked if I'd be open to referring him. I hesitated, mostly because I barely knew him, but he played it cool. Said it was no pressure, just figured he'd ask. I didn't commit to anything, just kind of changed the subject. After that night, though, it became a regular thing. He'd slip it into conversations like it was casual, but it was constant. He'd send me links to open roles at my company and ask which ones I thought he should go for. He started talking about how unhappy he was at his current job, how toxic his manager was, how he just needed one shot somewhere better. Every time we hung out, it came up. At first I thought, okay, maybe he's just ambitious, but it didn't stop. Eventually, I gave in. He wasn't rude about it or pushy in a loud way, just persistent. Like this quiet pressure that built up over time. I figured I'd refer him and maybe it'd stop being a thing. He applied for a software role. I submitted his info internally, and that was that. Or so I thought. He ended up getting an interview, then a second one, then a final round. I helped him prep a little, sent over some general tips, gave him a feel for what they'd probably ask. He was super appreciative, texting me updates constantly, telling me how much it meant to him. He kept saying he couldn't believe how fast everything was moving. He got the job. I remember the day he told me. He was grinning, like actually beaming. We met up for dinner to celebrate. He said he owed it all to me and that he was serious about making things work between us. That was on a Thursday. He dumped me the following Tuesday. No warning. No conversation about anything being wrong. Just a short message saying things weren't working and he wanted to focus on his new role. I tried calling him. No answer. Texted. He replied once. Said he didn't think it made sense to drag things out and hoped we could be cool. Cool? He literally coasted me the week after I helped get him hired. I tried to convince myself it wasn't intentional, that maybe he really did just get overwhelmed with a new job. But then I saw him at a work happy hour. He didn't know I'd be there. His face dropped when he saw me and he tried to act casual, but the energy was off. I watched him charm people, laugh with the hiring manager who picked him, act like the golden new hire. That's what hit me. He used me. He had zero intention of keeping things going. He just saw a shortcut into a company he wanted to work at and played nice until he got the offer. The compliments, the conversations, the sweet moments. All of it just part of the plan. And the worst part, he did it so smoothly that I didn't even catch on until it was over. I didn't tell anyone at work. What would I even say? Hey, I referred someone who tricked me into dating him for a job. No one would care. They'd just be glad we landed another engineer. I stopped following him online. Didn't want to see his posts. Didn't want to know how great things were going for him. Every now and then someone in the office mentions him, says he's doing well. Seems like a great fit. I just nod and pretend I barely knew him. But yeah, that's the story. No fight, no warning, no big dramatic ending. Just a guy who used dating like a job application and got exactly what he wanted. I met Bessie through a friend. It was one of those setups where no one really expects much, but you go anyway just to be polite. We were both at this small get-together, nothing big. Just drinks, music, random people half playing board games. She walked in wearing this oversized coat, hair up, holding a reusable coffee cup she never actually drank from. She didn't smile much, but when she did, it was the kind where you weren't sure if it was meant for you or not. She had the energy, cool, kind of untouchable. We ended up sitting next to each other on this weird corduroy couch. Someone passed around a bowl of popcorn, and she pushed it away like it offended her. She looked over at me and said she hated when people eat with their mouths open. I hadn't even touched the popcorn. I don't know why, but I laughed. That's how it started. The next couple of weeks were all right. We went out a few times, mostly to weird cafes and indie movie nights. She didn't like loud places, didn't drink much, and hated when people talked about work for too long. She told me she'd been vegan for 5 years, had strong opinions about skincare, and thought most holidays were a scam. Some of that stuff kind of rolled off me. I figured everyone's got their quirks. She was hard to read, but for some reason I kept going with it. I think part of me liked the challenge. She wasn't warm, but she wasn't cold either. Just somewhere in between, like she didn't really need anyone but didn't mind being around you if you fit into the quiet little space she carved out for herself. Then came the dinner with my parents. They live about an hour out of town. Quiet neighborhood, cozy house, the kind with framed family photos in the hallway and little ceramic animal statues in the living room. My mom was excited to meet her. She's old school, the type to plan a whole meal days in advance, break out the nice silverware, and have candles lit even if it's just for 4 people. I told Bessie ahead of time. Gave her the full heads up. Told her what kind of people my parents were. Mentioned that my mom was cooking, said we'd be sitting down for a proper meal. She just nodded, said she'd be fine, and that she'd bring a bottle of wine, even though she doesn't drink. We pulled up around 5. My dad greeted us at the door, made a joke about traffic. Bessie didn't laugh. She didn't really say much at all. Just gave this quick, short hi and walked in like she'd been there before. My mom came out from the kitchen, already smiling, waving her hands on a dish towel. She reached out for a hug, and Bessie stepped back and said she wasn't big on physical contact. My mom looked confused, but kept her smile on. Things went downhill fast after that. Dinner was already set. My mom made pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, fresh bread, all homemade. She even tried to make a side salad without cheese or dressing, just in case. As soon as we sat down, Bessie pushed the plate away. She said she wasn't going to eat anything because she didn't know where the ingredients came from. She didn't say it like she was nervous or shy about it. She said it like she was disgusted. My mom tried to explain that she did her best, even looked up vegan recipes online. Bessie just shrugged and said most people don't actually understand veganism. I wanted to crawl under the table. She spent the rest of the meal sitting there with her arms crossed, picking at a piece of dry lettuce while my parents tried to make small talk. Every question they asked, how long have you two been seeing each other? What do you do for work? What kind of movies do you like? She answered with 1 or 2 words like she couldn't be bothered. At one point, my dad asked if she wanted some tea or dessert, and she said she doesn't eat sugar because it's addictive and ruins your gut. The room was dead silent for a few seconds after that. My mom looked like she didn't know whether to apologize or just get up and leave the table. After dinner, Bessie stood up and said she was ready to go. No thank you. No goodbye. Just stood up, grabbed her coat, and walked to the door. I followed her out, embarrassed as hell. On the drive back, she didn't say a word until we were almost at her place. Then she said she thought it went well. I never brought her around my family again. A couple days later, my mom called and asked if everything was okay between us. I didn't even know how to explain it. There wasn't one big blow up, just this slow, awful vibe that hung in the air like smoke. You couldn't point to one thing, but the whole night felt wrong. I ended things about a week later. She didn't really react. Just said she figured I wasn't going to be able to keep up with her mindset long term. Like it was some test I had failed. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I just let her go. And that was it. No dramatic ending, no closure, no last fight. Just a weird, uncomfortable dinner that I still think about every time my mom brings it up with a laugh that's only half a joke. It started like one of those random dating app matches that you don't expect to go anywhere. I'd just gotten out of something messy and wasn't really looking for anything serious, but boredom does weird things to your standards. Dean messaged me first. He seemed normal enough. His photos were decent. His bio was basic. And he wasn't immediately cringe, which already put him above half the people on there. We talked for a few days. He used proper punctuation, didn't push boundaries, didn't act too eager. He had this dry kind of humor that took a second to land, but it worked. Our first date was at this little diner on the edge of town, the kind with laminated menus and a jukebox that only plays songs from the 70s. I actually liked it. It felt different from the usual loud bar or overpriced brunch spot. He picked it, said the fries were the best in the city. He wasn't wrong. After that night, we started seeing each other more regularly. Nothing crazy, just hanging out, watching movies at his place, ordering takeout, usual call stuff. He was quiet, but in a calm way, not awkward. He paid attention, remembered things I said, sent memes at the right time of day. At first, he came off a little quirky, like he always insist on plating my food for me, or he'd be super specific about how he made coffee, like it was some science experiment. I thought it was just one of those control freak but make it endearing things. It didn't seem like a big deal. Then it started to get odd. Subtle things, like I'd walk into the kitchen and he'd suddenly flinch and block whatever he was doing at the counter. Or I'd go to grab something from the fridge and he'd jump up and say he'd get it for me. One time I caught him throwing away a plate of food he made for me even though I hadn't touched it, and he acted like it was no big deal. I didn't push it. I figured maybe he had a weird cleanliness thing or just didn't like being watched in the kitchen. People have quirks. I left it alone. Everything snapped into place the day I forgot my phone charger at his place. I went over when he was at work to grab it. He'd given me a key a week before, which felt like a pretty big step at the time. I remember walking in, heading straight to his room, then hearing a noise in the kitchen. I thought maybe he forgot something and came back. I went to check. He wasn't there, but the back door was unlocked, and there was a plate sitting on the counter. Sandwich, chips, the whole thing. And I watched from the edge of the hallway as Dean stepped into the kitchen from the side entrance, not knowing I was there. He leaned over the plate, took a second, and then he actually spit on it. Not like a little joke spit, like a full, deliberate, gross spit. I stood there frozen. He didn't see me. He just picked up the plate, added a little parsley garnish like he was in a cooking show, and started walking toward the living room. That's when I stepped out. I didn't say anything at first, just stared at him. He jumped, dropped the plate. It shattered. His face went pale. I asked him what that was, not yelling, just dead serious. He blinked a few times like he was buffering, then said it was nothing. Then he said it wasn't a big deal. And he said he'd been doing it for a while. I don't know what kind of reaction I expected, but it definitely wasn't that. He said it was intimate, that it was the same as kissing. That sharing spit was natural when you're close with someone, and this was just an extension of that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, like he was saying it so casually, like I was a weird one for being grossed out. I asked how many times he'd done it. He just shrugged. I left. I didn't even bother grabbing my charger. I walked straight out of his apartment and blocked him before I hit the sidewalk. A few days later, I got this long email from him. No subject line, just paragraph after paragraph about how I misunderstood his intentions, and how he thought it was a special kind of connection and how food was his love language. He compared it to cooking with emotion. He seriously tried to spin it like he was being romantic. I didn't respond. I changed my locks, blocked his number, and told a few close friends, mostly because I needed to tell someone or I was going to lose my mind. One of them made a joke about it, something like, "At least he didn't poison you." And I laughed, But then I sat with that for a bit and realized how close it actually was to that. I don't know if he ever did anything worse to my food, and I'll never know. That's what bothers me the most. The whole thing messed with my head more than I expected. Like, it wasn't just the act itself. It was the way he tried to normalize it. Like I was supposed to be flattered. Like I should have felt closer to him because of it. It made me question every meal we had, every time he offered to cook, every time I thought he was being sweet. Since then, I had this weird block when it comes to eating food someone else prepares for me. I can't help but picture that scene in his kitchen. It's not even about trust anymore. It's about the fact that people can hide something like that behind a completely normal face. That was the last time I ever heard from him. He deleted all his socials not long after, or maybe he just blocked me. Either way, he vanished. Good. I don't ever want to see him again. That's it. I met Hannah at this small art crawl downtown. It wasn't anything fancy, just a bunch of pop-up galleries and empty storefronts, some local music, people walking around pretending to understand abstract pieces while drinking cheap wine from plastic cups. I wasn't really into the art, I just went because my roommate dragged me out. But I'm glad he did because that's where I saw her. She was standing by this weird wire sculpture that looked like a bunch of coat hangers twisted together. She had a glass of red wine in one hand and was talking to someone about the artist's background. I didn't hear everything she said, but I remember thinking she sounded way smarter than anyone else there, including the people actually showing their work. She had this casual confidence about her. Not loud, not flashy, just calm, like she was totally comfortable in her own skin. We ended up at the same bar afterward. This low-key spot a few blocks away that played nothing but early 2000s indie rock and smelled a little like spilled beer and old wood. She sat across from me at this sticky table while everyone else kind of drifted into their own corners. We talked for maybe an hour, maybe three. I honestly lost track of time. By the end of the night, we traded numbers, and I remember walking home with this weird mix of excitement and nerves that I hadn't felt in a long time. We started hanging out a lot after that. Coffee shops, bookstores, late night drives with no real destination. She wasn't overly affectionate, but she was consistent, present, the kind of person who actually listened when you talked and remembered the little things. I was into it. I was into her. It felt easy in a way I hadn't expected. She invited me over a few times to her place, this small apartment above a bakery. The kind where the ceilings are low and the radiator never shuts up. Her cat hated me, but that didn't stop me from showing up almost every other day. I'd bring takeout or help her hang shelves, or just lay around watching bad TV together. It was domestic in a way that felt comfortable, even though we'd only been seeing each other for a couple weeks. But then things started to feel off. Not in a dramatic way, just little things. She'd go hours without replying to texts, and when she did, it was short. Her tone changed. She stopped making plans and started acting like she was too busy all the time. I tried not to overthink it. I figured maybe she had stuff going on or just needed space. But something felt wrong, and I could tell it wasn't just in my head. One night, I decided to surprise her. I know how that sounds, but it wasn't anything weird. I had picked up this rare copy of a book she mentioned liking, some out-of-print poetry thing. Thought I'd swing by her place, drop it off, maybe hang out if she was free. When I got to her building, the lights were on upstairs. Her window was cracked open, and I could hear music playing faintly from inside. It was around 9 p.m., not too late. I buzzed the door, waited a bit, no answer. I buzzed again, still nothing. But the door was slightly propped open, probably because of the bakery workers downstairs. So I let myself in and headed up the stairs. As I got closer to her door, I heard voices. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe a friend, maybe her roommate. But then I heard laughing. And not just casual, hanging out kind of laughter. It was loud, personal. Then came silence, followed by noises that made it very clear she wasn't alone. I stopped just outside her door. My heart was racing, not because I was angry, but because this weird dread hit me, like I just stepped into something I wasn't supposed to see. The door wasn't fully shut. It was open just a crack. And through that gap I saw her, with another guy. But it wasn't just any guy. It was a guy I knew. Not personally, but from around. He worked at a bookstore I used to go to all the time. I'd seen him there, always wearing these oversized sweaters, always with chipped black nail polish. I'd never thought much about him until right then when I saw him kissing her, touching her like they'd been together for years. She looked different, more herself in a way. like she'd taken off some version of herself she wore around me, and he looked completely at home. I stepped back slowly, trying not to make a sound, and walked out of the building without even looking back. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I just deleted her number and blocked her on everything. It felt surreal, like I'd walked into a scene from someone else's life. I don't even think it was about the cheating, really. It was the fact that she put on this version of herself for me. Soft, gentle, warm, while clearly living a different life when I wasn't around. I kept wondering if I had missed signs, if I'd ignored stuff on purpose because I wanted it to work. Maybe she never saw me as someone real. Maybe I was just a distraction until the person she actually wanted came around. I don't know. What messes me up is how she could switch it off so easily. One day we were lying on her couch watching old movies, and a few days later she was with someone else like I'd never even been there. But that's how it ended. No big fight, no confrontation. Just me standing outside her apartment with a book in my hand, realizing I didn't actually know the person I had been falling for. And that was it. I met Nick at this little Korean barbecue place in Seattle. One of those places where the grill is built into the table and everything smells like smoke and garlic for the rest of the night. My friend Amber brought him along with her boyfriend. At first, he didn't say much, not in a shy or awkward way, just like he didn't feel the need to force conversation. It actually made him stand out. He was tall, kind of lean, had this quiet confidence about him. He didn't try too hard to impress anyone, which looking back might have been the point. But that night, I remember thinking he was different. In a good way. After dinner, he asked if I wanted to grab a drink at a dive bar down the street, just the two of us. I said yes. Things moved fast after that. We started seeing each other a lot. Coffee runs, movie nights, random road trips. He was sweet, thoughtful. The kind of guy who would remember exactly how I took my tea or notice when I was having a bad day without me saying a word. For a while, I felt like I'd finally found someone who really got me. We'd stay up talking about the dumbest things and the deepest stuff too. And yeah, things got physical. Nothing wild. Just the usual things couples do. I trusted him. And that's the part that messes with me the most. He had a pretty nice apartment, minimal but clean. He was into photography, or at least that's what he told me. There were always a couple of tripods set up around the place, and I remember thinking it was cool he had a hobby like that. He said he was into film and lighting, which I didn't question. Why would I? I never thought twice about the cameras. They didn't even look like they were on most of the time, just kind of tucked away in corners like they'd been forgotten there. One night, I stayed over and noticed one of the tripods had been moved, just slightly, maybe a foot or so. I didn't think much of it. I assumed he'd been using it earlier and forgot to put it back. I never imagined he was recording anything. It wasn't until a random Tuesday weeks later that everything cracked open. I was on my lunch break scrolling through Instagram when I got a DM from a burner account. No profile pic, no posts, nothing. Just a link and the words, "Thought you should see this." I almost ignored it, but something about it made me pause. I clicked it. It took me to an OF page. His page. At first, I thought it was a mistake. There was no way Nick was on there, but then I saw the banner. His apartment. The same couch we used to hang out on. And then I saw myself. Clear as day. It was me. They were videos. Of me. In moments I thought were personal. Moments I never agreed to share. He'd recorded us without my knowledge. Multiple times. Different angles. Some from the corner of the room, others closer. Like he'd moved the camera while I was in the bathroom and were sleeping. I couldn't breathe. I sat there in the middle of the break room, heart racing, trying to wrap my head around what I was seeing. There were hundreds of comments. Guys asking for more, people talking about me like I was a character in a show. Some were even arguing about which video was their favorite. I felt disgusting. Violated doesn't even begin to describe it. I called him. No answer. Texted. Nothing. He ghosted me immediately like he knew I found out. I went to his place that night. He was gone. Not just not home, gone. Like he packed up and vanished. The place was empty. No cameras, no clothes. Even the couch was missing. I knocked on a neighbor's door, asked if they'd seen him. The woman said he'd moved out that morning. Paid up front and left. No forwarding address. I reported it. Went to the police, filed everything I could. They said they'd investigate, but you know how that goes. They told me to document everything and not engage with the account. But the video stayed up for weeks. Even when the page went down, copies were already out there. People had saved them, uploaded them to other sites. I couldn't stop it. My face is out there. My body. I never gave permission. And now I don't even know how many people have seen me like that. It's like he turned my privacy into a product and disappeared the second I found out. No warning, no explanation. Just gone. I still don't understand how someone can fake being so genuine. How he could sit across from me at dinner, brush my hair behind my ear, tell me I mattered, and all while be playing this. He never once made me feel unsafe. That's what scares me most. It didn't feel wrong until it was too late. I don't really date anymore. Not because I don't want to, but because I don't trust what's real. It's like everyone wears a mask and I can't tell who's behind it. People always say you'll see red flags if you're paying attention, but what if they're not red until you zoom out? What if they're just beige? Quiet, easy to miss. Sometimes I wonder if he's still out there doing this to someone else, recording someone new, uploading them, erasing the evidence, and moving on before they ever notice. That thought keeps me up. It makes me sick. But yeah, that's what happened. No dramatic ending. No satisfying revenge. Just a guy who vanished and a part of me I'll never get back. I should have trusted my gut, but when you're falling for someone, you don't always listen to those little warning bells. Spencer seemed so normal at first, like too normal actually. He was kind, charming, and had this way of making me feel completely comfortable. We'd been dating for a few months, and while everything had been fun up to that point, something started to feel off. It wasn't anything huge, just little things at first. Things I brushed off because I didn't want to overthink it. But looking back, I should have paid attention. It started with the compliments. Spencer loved to talk about my hair. He'd always tell me how beautiful it was, how perfect the color was, how soft it felt. I mean, I get it. People compliment each other in relationships. But it felt like it went a little beyond normal admiration. He would always touch it, run his fingers through it, and even sniff it a bit like it was some sort of obsession. I thought maybe it was just a weird quirk of his, or maybe he really was just that into me. And then came the weird habit. One night, we were hanging out at his place. It was late, and we'd been watching a movie. He'd made me a cup of tea, and we were just relaxing. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up in the middle of the night. Spencer was still there, next to me, but something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. My hair was messed up, more than usual after sleeping, and I noticed a couple of strands on the pillow that definitely didn't look like they'd fallen out naturally. They seemed cut, like cleanly cut. But I was tired, and I didn't think much of it. I shrugged it off and went back to sleep. The next morning, I woke up with this strange sensation. My hair felt different, lighter in some places. I looked in the mirror and saw that some of it was missing. At first, I thought maybe I'd just been tossing and turning a lot. Or maybe I had been so out of it I didn't realize I pulled some hair out while I slept. But no, this wasn't like that. A few strands were missing from the ends, and it looked deliberate. Someone had cut it. I didn't think Spencer had done it. I mean, why would he? It seemed so weird. But it bugged me, so I kept it in the back of my mind, wondering if maybe I was just imagining things. Over the next couple of weeks, the same thing started happening more frequently. I'd wake up with a few more strands of hair gone. Just a little chunk here and there, but it was becoming more obvious. And the weirdest part was, Spencer would never bring it up. He never said anything about my hair being different. He would just compliment me like he always had, but I couldn't ignore that something was off. One night, I decided to stay over at Spencer's again. This time, I made sure to stay up a little longer. I was determined to figure out what was going on. I pretended to fall asleep, but I stayed awake, just waiting. And sure enough, just as I started to drift off, I felt it, a tug on my hair. I didn't move, didn't say anything. I just let it happen. Spencer was so focused on whatever he was doing that he didn't even notice I was awake. And that's when I realized the truth. I had always assumed he was just being affectionate with me when he ran his hands through my hair. But this time, I felt it. He was cutting it. I'd been feeling snipping away at the strands, methodically, like he was making sure to take little chunks out at a time. My stomach dropped, and I froze. What the hell was he doing? Why was he doing this? I didn't move. I didn't want him to know I was awake. I had to figure this out, had to see how far this was going to go. After a few minutes, I heard him quietly go to the bathroom. That's when I jumped out of bed and ran to the mirror. Sure enough, more of my hair was gone. This time, it was even worse. Bigger chunks of it. I was horrified. I didn't know what to think. Why would he do this? What was he thinking? I needed answers. The next day, I went through Spencer's things while he was out. I know it was shady, but I was desperate to understand what was happening. I found a few bags in the back of his closet. When I opened them, I almost lost it. Inside were small plastic bags filled with hair, my hair. Not just a few strands either. There were whole chunks of it, like he'd been collecting it for weeks. The bags were labeled with dates, and I realized he had been cutting my hair while I slept for a long time. And that's when I saw it. There were even a couple of photos of me that Spencer had taken without my knowledge. Pictures of me sleeping, pictures of my hair, pictures of me in positions I didn't remember. I didn't know what to do. My mind was racing. I was completely disgusted, but also terrified. What had you been doing with all of that hair? And why hadn't he told me? I needed to know more, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his phone. What I found made my stomach twist. Spencer had been selling my hair, selling it online, to people I didn't even want to think about, people who paid him for it. His messages were filled with offers and confirmations of payments for my hair, pictures of it being cut, and even a few requests for more specific types of hair, like different lengths or more authentic photos of me while I was sleeping. It was too much. I felt like I was going to throw up. My body felt like it wasn't even mine anymore. This man, who I thought cared about me, had been taking pieces of me, literally, and selling them to complete strangers. He had been treating me like some kind of object, a commodity, and I didn't even know. I knew I had to leave him. No contact, no explanations, just get out. I didn't care what he thought. I blocked him everywhere and never spoke to him again. But I still feel sick to my stomach whenever I think about it. I'll never get those pieces of myself back. I don't know who bought them or what they were planning to do with them. And every time I look in the mirror, I wonder if it'll ever feel like my hair is really mine again. Some things you just can't unsee. Some people you just can't forget. I never saw it coming. Not in a million years. Gemma seemed perfect at first. Funny kind. Everything I thought I wanted in a girlfriend. We met through mutual friends, and it was the usual thing at first. Lots of texting, dinners, casual hangouts. Everything felt easy. But looking back, maybe it was too easy. We'd been dating for a few months when things started to go south, but I didn't pick up on the signs right away. I guess I was too caught up in the whirlwind of it all. She was great at making me feel special. Always complimenting me, always making me feel like the most important person in the room. For a while, I thought we were on the same page, that things were moving forward and everything was fine. But then, without warning, the mood shifted. One day, out of nowhere, she started getting distant. She'd pull away during conversations, not reply to texts as quickly, and just seemed less interested in spending time with me. I thought maybe it was just a rough patch. Everyone goes through those, right? I tried not to overthink it. But as the days went on, it became obvious something was wrong. I kept asking her what was going on, if everything was okay, but she'd brush it off with vague answers. Oh, I'm just tired, or work has been crazy. But deep down, I felt like something else was going on. It didn't add up. Then one night, she dropped the bombshell. It came completely out of the blue. She broke up with me. No warning, no explanation, just a flat out, it's over. I was shocked, of course. We hadn't even argued or fought. There wasn't a specific reason she gave me, just that she needed space and that we weren't right for each other. I took it hard and I tried to respect her decision. It hurt, but I figured it would be for the best. I mean, sometimes relationships just don't work out. That's part of life, right? But what came next made me question everything. Not even a week after the breakup, rumors started spreading. And I'm not talking about a few whispers here and there. This was a full-on smear campaign. People in my circle, my family, even some of my close friends were suddenly coming to me with questions, asking about this supposed cheating incident. Gemma had been telling everyone that I had cheated on her. She painted a picture of me as this untrustworthy, lying scumbag who couldn't keep his promises. And the worst part, she had made it so convincing that some people actually believed her. I didn't know what to do at first. I tried to talk to my friends about it, explain my side of the story. But the more I tried, the more people seemed to doubt me. It felt like I was walking around with a black mark on my name. No matter how hard I tried to defend myself, no one was willing to listen. It just looked at me with pity or disgust as if I had actually done something wrong. It wasn't just friends either. My family was getting involved too. My cousin called me one night and, in the most hurtful way possible, told me that Gemma had told her I had been cheating behind her back. Apparently, she'd been spreading these lies to my family, painting me as this terrible person who had no respect for her or the relationship. My parents were disappointed in me, even though I had no idea what the hell was going on. It felt like my entire world was crumbling down because of something that wasn't true. I was angry. I wanted to lash out to tell everyone that she was lying, but I knew if I did that, it would only make things worse. So I kept quiet. I didn't confront her. I didn't say anything to anyone. I just tried to ride out the storm, hoping that somehow the truth would come to light. But then something happened that I wasn't prepared for. It was a few weeks after the breakup when I ran into her at a mutual friend's party. I didn't expect to see her there, and honestly, I wasn't sure how to feel when I did. I had been avoiding places where I thought she might be, but the universe had other plans. At first, she acted completely normal, as if nothing had happened. She was laughing, joking, just being the girl I once knew. But when I walked up to her, I saw something in her eyes, something cold and calculating. It was like she was watching me, analyzing me, waiting for the right moment to strike. That's when the pieces started falling into place. As the night went on, I noticed something strange. She was talking to some guy at the party, a guy I didn't recognize. At first, I thought maybe he was just a friend, but the way they were laughing and leaning in close to each other made me uneasy. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something didn't feel right. Later, I overheard some of my friends talking about how they had seen Gemma and this guy out a couple of times since we'd broken up. And it wasn't just a casual meetup you'd expect after a breakup. No, this was different. They were together, like really together, going on dates, spending nights at each other's places. The same guy she had been spreading rumors about me to my friends and family. The same guy she'd been claiming I cheated with. I felt sick to my stomach. The whole time, I had been the one accused of something I hadn't done, while she had been doing the very thing she'd been accusing me of. I was furious, but at the same time, I felt a wave of relief. At least now I knew the truth. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I didn't. I couldn't. It felt like she'd already won. She had turned my life upside down, made me out to be the bad guy, and here she was, living her life like nothing had happened. I didn't say anything to her at the party. I just left. In the weeks that followed, the truth slowly started to come out. People began realizing what she had done, how she had manipulated the situation and turned everything around to make me look like the villain. The whispers stopped. Some of my friends came back and apologized for not believing me, but the damage was done. I'd lost people I thought I could trust. It's been months now, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. I had to cut a lot of people out of my life, and I've had to rebuild some of my relationships from the ground up. But there's still this nagging feeling that maybe I'll never be able to fully escape what she did. I keep wondering how she could be so cold, so willing to ruin my reputation for the sake of her own selfish desires. I learned a lot from that relationship, but the one thing I can't shake is how easily someone can twist the truth and make you doubt everything you thought you knew about them. I'll never forget how she played me, and I'll never let anyone do it again. I should have known something was off from the very start. It wasn't anything huge, more like little oddities that, at the time, just felt like quirks. Jess was cool, or at least that's how I saw it when we first met. We clicked right away, or so I thought. She was funny, smart, and always had something interesting to say. The kind of person who, when they walk into a room, you can't help but notice. I figured, hey, this could be the start of something good. But it didn't take long for things to start getting weird. We'd been dating for a couple of months when it started. At first, it seemed harmless, like a joke or a playful challenge. Jess would make comments about my appearance, not in a mean way, but in a way that felt a little off. She'd point out things like how my shoulders were too broad or how my legs weren't toned enough. She'd say things like, you'd look a lot better if you worked out more, or do you even lift? I would laugh it off, thinking maybe I was just being too sensitive. Maybe she was just teasing like people do in relationships. But looking back, I can see now that it wasn't really teasing. It was a slow build-up. Little by little, she was planting seeds that made me start to doubt myself. The first time she asked me to shower in front of her, I didn't know what to think. We were just hanging out at her place watching a movie. She got this weird look on her face and said something like, "I want to see you clean up. I bet you'd look hotter fresh out of the shower." I laughed it off, thinking it was just one of those strange requests that people make when they're feeling playful. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. So I shrugged and said, sure, why not? The weird part wasn't the showering. The weird part was what happened after. As I stood there, letting the hot water run over me, she just stood there, watching. I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. There I was, naked with her eyes locked on me, like she was inspecting every inch of my body. It wasn't like she was just watching casually either. She started making comments. Your chest could be a bit more defined, or you got kind of a dad bod, don't you? It was awkward, but I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe I was just overthinking things, so I kept going with it. But it didn't stop there. It became a routine. Every time we hung out, she'd want me to shower in front of her. Sometimes she'd even ask me to flex or do weird little poses while she watched. She'd comment on everything. The way my abs weren't as visible as she wanted them to be, or how my arms were a bit too skinny. I remember one time she asked me to turn around, and when I did, she commented on how my back wasn't as muscular as it should be. She wasn't saying these things to be helpful either. It was almost like she was pointing out flaws on purpose. At first, I tried to laugh it off, but after a while, it started to eat at me. I started spending more time at the gym trying to change my body to meet her expectations. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before, hoping that maybe if I looked better, she'd stop with the comments. But no matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. The more I changed, the more she seemed to find new things to criticize. Your chest is better now, but your abs still need work. Or you got the arms, but your legs are still weak. It was exhausting. I felt like I was always trying to prove myself to her. One day, I finally snapped. We'd been together for a while by this point, and I was getting fed up with the constant pressure. It had gotten to the point where I couldn't even look in a mirror without hearing her voice in my head, pointing out all the things that were wrong with me. I started to hate the way I looked, even though I knew it wasn't rational. But every time she looked at me with that critical gaze, it felt like she was seeing all of my flaws and nothing else. That day, she asked me to shower in front of her again. I'd had enough. I didn't want to do it. I was sick of feeling like an object, sick of being judged every time I took off my clothes. I told her no. I told her I wasn't comfortable with it anymore, that I didn't want to be constantly scrutinized. She didn't take it well. In fact, she got upset. It was in that moment that I realized just how controlling she'd become. She didn't care about me. She cared about what I looked like and how she could mold me into whatever image she wanted. But I didn't see it for what it was until I started pulling away. The more I pulled away, the worse it got. She started getting passive-aggressive. When I didn't want to shower in front of her, she'd make little comments about how I wasn't trying hard enough to meet her standards. I thought you wanted to be better for me, she'd say. Or, if you really cared about me, you'd be willing to show me everything. It was like she had this power over me, making me feel guilty for not meeting her expectations. It made me question myself, my body, everything I thought I knew about who I was. The final straw came when she started making demands. She wanted to see me shower, but this time it wasn't enough for her to just wash. She wanted to take pictures of me, to capture moments of me at my most vulnerable. She said it would be fun, but I knew deep down that it wasn't. I didn't feel like I was being loved or appreciated. I felt like I was being turned into some kind of project, something she could mold to fit her ideal image. I don't know why I stayed as long as I did. Maybe it was because I was scared to be alone. Maybe it was because, in the beginning, it had felt so good to have someone's attention. But it wasn't love. It wasn't even close. I ended things shortly after that. It wasn't easy, and I didn't know how to explain everything to my friends, but I had to get out. I had to stop letting her control me, stop letting her make me feel like I was never enough. Looking back, I'm disgusted at how easily I let someone manipulate me into thinking that was normal. I don't know what happened to her after that. I've heard things here and there, but I don't care to know. All I care about now is rebuilding myself, learning to appreciate my body for what it is, not what someone else thinks it should be. I can't say I'm completely over it, but every day is a little easier. The hardest part, though, realizing that sometimes the person who claims to love you can be the one who hurts you the most. It all started so perfectly. I met Andrew through a mutual friend at a small gathering. He was charming, funny, and seemed so genuinely interested in everything I had to say. You know how you can just tell when someone's really listening. He did that. He made me feel special, like I was the only person in the room. It didn't hurt that he was good looking too, tall, dark hair, with this easy smile that made me feel at ease from the start. I couldn't believe my luck. After a few casual chats, we went on our first date. The chemistry was instant. I remember laughing so much I thought my cheeks might hurt, but in a good way. The kind of laughter that makes you think you're onto something real. The first few weeks were bliss. He would shower me with compliments, little gifts here and there. Nothing over the top, but thoughtful. Flowers when I had a rough week. A book I mentioned wanting to read. Texts every morning telling me how beautiful I looked, how lucky he was to have met me. At first, I thought it was sweet, a little overboard maybe, but nothing that raised any red flags. I didn't have the experience to recognize it back then, but looking back now, I can see how it all started. He started texting me constantly. And I mean constantly. At first, it was flattering. I felt wanted. He'd check in on me every few hours, ask how my day was going, what I was up to. If I didn't answer right away, he'd follow up with, hey, you there? Or just checking in. I didn't mind at first. He was just excited, right? At least that's what I kept telling myself. But then it started to get weird. After a while, it felt that I could never be away from my phone without him getting anxious. I'd go out with friends or have a date myself, and if I didn't respond to his texts quickly enough, he would get upset. At first, it was just small things, comments like, I miss you, or why haven't you texted me back? Then, when I wouldn't respond, the messages would start getting more personal. One night, I went to dinner with a group of friends and didn't check my phone for a couple of hours. I came back to texts from him that felt so out of place, so invasive. It started with him sending me a few pictures. At first, I thought they were just for fun, in doing something silly, a selfie, a picture of him in his kitchen. But then they started to change. The pictures became more intimate. His shirt off, him in his bathroom mirror, angles that made me feel uncomfortable, like he was sending them to force a reaction out of me. I didn't respond at first, hoping he'd stop, but he kept sending them, each one more explicit than the last. The guilt began to creep in. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, but I felt like I couldn't breathe when I saw those photos. I started responding less and less. I'd send a quick text back, I'm busy, or talk later, just so I could get away from my phone. But it didn't stop. It only got worse. Then came the night when I had enough. I'd been out with some friends, having a great time, not even thinking about my phone. I came home to a barrage of messages from him. I could feel the weight of his desperation in every word. Where were you? Why didn't you answer? You can't just ignore me. It was like I couldn't breathe, my chest tight with panic. That was the first time I realized just how much control he was trying to have over me. I told him to stop. I told him I needed space, that I was uncomfortable with what he was doing. It felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders, but little did I know I had just opened a whole new can of worms. The next morning, I woke up to more texts. This time, they weren't just pictures. They were messages about our relationship, about the moments we'd shared, all shared with people I didn't know. My family, my friends. Some of them I hadn't even spoken to in years. He'd sent them the most private things from our time together, photos I didn't even remember him taking, moments that were just for us. He sent them all, along with messages like, see how much she means to me. And this is what happens when you find someone special. I was horrified. I called him, but he didn't pick up. I tried to text, but he blocked me. All I could do was watch as my private life was thrown out there for everyone to see. People were confused, maybe even concerned, but no one really knew how to react. My friends were texting me, asking if everything was okay. My mom even called, wanting to know what was going on. It felt like my entire life had been flipped upside down, and I had no control over it. It didn't stop there. Every time I tried to distance myself, he'd do something more drastic. He'd send me even more pictures, more private moments. He made sure that no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing, that couldn't escape him. His control over me was suffocating. When I blocked him, he'd create new accounts, finding ways to send me his love through pictures and texts. Eventually, I had to take everything down. I had to delete my social media accounts, block anyone who had ever talked to him, and remove every trace of him from my life. But the scars didn't go away. They lingered. My friends still ask me about it sometimes, wondering what happened, but I don't talk about it. The embarrassment, the shame, the fear, it's still with me. I still don't understand why he did it. Was it love? Was it obsession? I don't know. But it left me feeling like I'd been violated in ways I couldn't even put into words. I just wanted it all to stop, to go back to the way it was before he started sending those pictures, before he started forcing me to see how far he would go to keep me. I never saw Andrew again after that, but it didn't matter. the damage was done. I'll never forget how easily he went from charming and affectionate to controlling and obsessive. It was like I was a prize he needed to keep, a possession he couldn't stand to let go of. Looking back, I wonder how much of it I missed, how many warning signs I ignored because it felt too good to be true. But I don't think I'll ever get answers. I don't think I'll ever be the same. It started off so normal. So normal. I didn't expect anything to be wrong, not with Tom. We met through a mutual friend, and at first, it seemed like any other relationship. He was kind, funny, and a little quirky, but nothing that set off alarm bells. But looking back, maybe I should have seen the red flags from the start. I don't know. You always think you'll spot something off if it happens, but when you're in it, it's hard to see things for what they really are. The first couple of months were great, though. We went out for dinners, we hung out with friends, and I stayed over at his place sometimes. His apartment was cozy, kind of small but comfortable. Nothing extraordinary, but I liked it. It was simple. That's how I felt about him, too. Simple, easygoing, nothing out of the ordinary. Then, as time passed, it started to change. It was subtle at first. He'd ask me to stay over more often, which I didn't mind at all. I liked being around him. So I started spending more nights at his place and less at mine. Eventually, it felt natural to just leave a few things at his place, little by little, an extra toothbrush, a hairbrush, a few shirts. It didn't seem strange at all. After all, we were getting closer, right? Then one night, after staying there for a few weeks in a row, I decided to unpack my things properly. I figured if I was going to be spending so much time there, I should at least make it feel more like home. I was sorting through a couple of boxes in the living room when I noticed something strange. There was this door tucked away behind a bookshelf in the corner of the apartment. I'd never seen it before. Maybe it was there the whole time, or maybe I had just missed it. But it was there now, and it made me uneasy. I felt this weird tug in my stomach, like something was just wrong. I pushed the bookshelf aside. It was heavier than I expected, and the door creaked open with a sound that made my skin crawl. Inside, it was dark, the only light coming from a small window near the ceiling. The air was stale, and the room smelled like dust and something else I couldn't quite place. I stepped inside, and that's when I saw it. The walls were covered in photos, hundreds of them. Photos of me. My face, my family, even random strangers. And the strangest part, there were notes written in the corners of almost every single one. They were cryptic, sometimes jumbled, sometimes clear but unsettling. Some of them had phrases like, "She's perfect." Others were more unsettling, like, "I know where you'll be tonight." Some of the photos were so personal, it made my stomach churn. There was one of me in my old childhood bedroom, a picture I didn't remember ever being taken. Another one was from my graduation day, except I didn't even know someone had taken that picture. And the weirdest one of all was a photo of me and my best friend, taken at a party I had gone to last summer. But I never remembered him being there. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, but I couldn't stop myself from looking closer. My eyes scanned over the photos, each one more disturbing than the last. The walls were littered with them, as if he had been following me, collecting moments from my life like some kind of twisted scrapbook. I stumbled backward, my breath coming out faster now, my pulse racing. I felt lightheaded, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. Why would he do this? Why wouldn't he tell me about this room? I tried to leave, but something stopped me. It was like a voice in my head, telling me I couldn't just turn around and pretend I hadn't seen this. Not after all this. I was shaking now, the photos haunting me. My hands were clammy as I reached for my phone to snap a picture. Maybe I could show anyone, but I couldn't even look away from the photos long enough to call for help. I heard the sound of footsteps behind me and I froze. Tom. He'd come home. I didn't know what to say, what to do, so I just turned to face him. My mind was racing, my mouth dry, trying to piece together any explanation for what I was seeing, but none came. He looked at me, not in the way you'd expect someone to react if they caught you snooping. He wasn't angry, not in the way I'd imagined. No, he was calm. Too calm. "I see you found the room," he said, his voice soft. Too soft. It sent chills down my spine. I didn't even know what to ask first. Why? Was all I could manage, my voice barely above a whisper. Why are there photos of me, of my family, of random people? He smiled like I should have known the answer already. "It's just a project, babe. I wanted to understand you better, you know." His words didn't match the eerie calmness in his eyes. "All these little moments, they mean something, right?" I backed up slowly, unsure whether I should bolt or try to stay calm. What do you mean by project? I managed to ask, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. It's simple, he said, still too calm, still too collected. I've been collecting memories. Yours, mine, even those of people close to you. I want to understand how we're connected. You'll see. It all makes sense in the end. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. What does this all mean, Tom? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you? You don't understand, he interrupted, his voice low now, almost threatening. You can't leave. Not yet. Not until you promise me. Promise me you won't tell anyone about this room. My stomach turned. What? I can't promise that. His expression shifted. The calmness melted away, replaced by something darker. His gaze was sharp, almost desperate. You don't get it. You don't leave. You stay. You understand what this means. It's just a project, and it's us together forever. I couldn't take any more. I turned and ran, pushing past him as quickly as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't even care about the rest of my things in that apartment. I needed to get out. Now, I didn't even know where I was running to, but it didn't matter. I just had to get away. I didn't tell anyone at first, not right away. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know who would believe me. But I haven't gone back to his apartment not once. Every time I think about it, about those photos, I feel like I can't breathe. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forget the look in his eyes when he told me not to say anything. That looked like he knew something I didn't want to know. All I know now is that I'll never feel safe again. Not as long as those photos exist. Not as long as he's out there, still keeping track of me, still watching. I've never been one to rush into things. Not when it comes to relationships, not when it comes to tattoos. But Austin, he was different. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Our first few dates were actually pretty normal. Dinner, drinks, a few laughs. He was charming, funny, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. I know it sounds cliche, but that's how it felt. When someone makes you feel like that, it's easy to get lost in the moment, right? So when he suggested we get matching tattoos, I didn't think it was that big of a deal at first. I mean, it was only our third date, but we'd been talking nonstop and things were moving faster than I expected. I remember laughing it off, telling him I wasn't the tattoo type. He looked at me with his soft grin, almost like he was testing me, and said, "It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just something small. A symbol of us. The idea was tempting. I couldn't deny that. I mean, who wouldn't be flattered by the idea of someone wanting to mark their body with something as permanent as a tattoo to represent their relationship? Plus, the thought of us having something tangible, something that would always remind me of him, felt romantic. Stupid, right? I thought we were on the same page. After a few days of back and forth, I finally agreed. Reluctantly, maybe, but I agreed. He was excited, almost too excited. He kept sending me pictures of different tattoo ideas, trying to convince me that it would be something we could always look back on with fondness. It's just a little thing, babe. It'll be like our own little secret. I didn't know why, but something about his tone, the way he phrased it, sent a small, unnoticed ripple of doubt through my mind. But I brushed it off. What's the worst that could happen, right? So we went. We sat in that tiny tattoo parlor downtown, the smell of ink and antiseptic lingering in the air, the sound of buzzing needles filling the room. I felt a familiar mix of nervous excitement you get before something permanent is done to your body. Austin seemed perfectly at ease. He didn't hesitate for a second when the tattoo artist asked where he wanted his design. I was still deciding on the placement when Austin spoke up. "How about your name?" He said it so casually, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I blinked at him, unsure if he was joking. "My name?" I asked, still not sure if I heard him right. "Yeah," he said. "It'll be like a constant reminder of you, of us." I didn't love the idea, but I didn't want to seem like I was overthinking it. It was a small tattoo, right? Nothing crazy. I figured if it ended up feeling weird, I could always get it covered up later. And after all, we were becoming pretty close. I ended up getting a tiny symbol on my wrist, something simple, a crescent moon. He seemed really happy with it. After all, it was only fair, right? He was getting my name on his body, so the least I could do was a small design for myself. That's when things started to get off. I didn't think much of it when I left the tattoo parlor. We hugged goodbye, went our separate ways, and I figured that'd be the end of it. But the next time we met, Austin was wearing a tight shirt, the sleeves just short enough for me to see something on his chest. I could barely make out what it was at first, just a dark shape beneath his skin, but the closer I got, the more I realized what it was. My heart started to race, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. "Take it off," I said, suddenly feeling uncomfortable. Austin laughed like I had just made the most absurd request. He didn't even seem to register the tension in my voice. "No, babe, check it out," he said, tugging a neckline of his shirt. And then I saw it. My face. The tattoo artist had literally tattooed my entire face, on his chest. It was there staring back at me, a large, full-scale portrait of my face right above his heart. It was so detailed, so unnervingly lifelike. It almost felt like I was staring into a mirror. I just stared at it, frozen. I didn't know what to say. "You don't like it?" he asked, almost sounding hurt. "I thought you'd be happy. We're connected now, forever, in a way no one else can understand." I didn't know how to respond. My mind was racing, my gut telling me that something was seriously wrong, but I couldn't place it. Why would he do this? Why would he think this was a good idea? I didn't say you could do that. I managed, my voice barely a whisper. That's too much, Austin." He shrugged, unfazed. "I thought it'd be perfect, a gift for you. We're bonded now. No one will ever take that away from us." I tried to shake it off. Maybe he didn't understand how uncomfortable this was, how invasive it felt. But the more I looked at it, the more it gnawed at me. This wasn't a symbol of a relationship anymore. This felt like an obsession. I tried to talk to him about it, tell him it was too much, that he'd gone too far. But every time I brought it up, he brushed it off. He even got defensive when I mentioned the idea of him getting it removed. "Why would I do that?" he'd argue. "It's a part of me now, a part of us." The problem was, every time I saw him, it wasn't just his chest anymore. The tattoo, the massive portrait of me, was all I could focus on. It was like I couldn't escape it. And strangely, it felt like I couldn't escape him either. The way he talked about our relationship, the way he looked at me like I was his, like I belonged to him, everything started to feel like I was suffocating under his gaze. It wasn't love. It wasn't affection. It was possessiveness. It was control. And no matter how many times I tried to distance myself, he kept finding ways to pull me back in. I tried to ignore the feeling in my stomach every time I saw him, the way he wouldn't take no for an answer. It wasn't the tattoos that were the problem. It was him. The tattoos were just a symptom. But no matter how many times I tried to walk away, no matter how much I pulled back, he was always there, with that damned face on his chest, as if the ink had become some kind of anchor that kept him tied to me. I never told him, but every time I looked at him, I knew one thing for sure. We weren't connected. Not in the way he thought. We were trapped. I thought things were going great at first. Paul was sweet, charming, and respectful. He gave me space, never pushed me to do anything I wasn't comfortable with. We went on a few dates, and everything felt normal. In the beginning, he was careful about privacy. We'd hang out, have fun, and take a few pictures here and there. Just typical stuff. I didn't think much of it. But then, as we spent more time together, things began to feel off. It wasn't immediate, but over time, I started noticing little changes that made me uncomfortable. At first, he just snapped the occasional picture, like me laughing at a joke he told or us sitting in a coffee shop. Nothing weird, nothing that screamed red flag. But it started getting more intense. We'd go to a park, and before I knew it, Paul would be snapping pictures of me from behind a tree, trying to get some candid shot. He said it was cute that I looked natural in them, but I couldn't help but feel a bit off. It wasn't like he was just capturing a moment. He was obsessively taking them. It started happening every time we were together. We'd go to the grocery store, and he'd pull out his phone to snap pictures of me picking out vegetables. We'd be sitting on a bench by the lake, and he'd suddenly take pictures of me from across the path like it was some kind of photo shoot. It was relentless. At first, I chalked it up to him just being a little too into photography or maybe just enjoying our time together. But then it started crossing the line. He began posting the pictures everywhere. It started with a few on his Instagram, a couple of cute moments that seemed harmless. But then it escalated. More and more pictures started appearing, not just on his social media accounts, but all over Facebook, Snapchat, and you Twitter. Every time we hung out, there'd be pictures of us, shared with his friends and followers. It didn't feel cute anymore. It felt like he was putting me on display. I thought it was just a phase, but when the pictures began to get more intimate, I started feeling uneasy. One day, I saw a picture of me cooking dinner in my kitchen, taken without me knowing, clearly a candid shot from the hallway. Then there was another from my parents' house. It was me sitting on the couch, looking out the window, completely unaware that he was snapping a picture of me from the doorway. It felt invasive. It wasn't just about us anymore. It was about him controlling how people saw me, how I was being represented. The breaking point came one evening when I noticed a picture of me sleeping on his couch. I had fallen asleep watching a movie, and the next thing I knew, I was staring at a picture of me completely vulnerable, eyes closed, with no consent from me at all. It was like he was cataloging every part of my life, like I was some kind of exhibit he was showing off to his followers. When I saw that picture, I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't just sit back and let it happen anymore. I confronted him about it, trying to explain how uncomfortable I was. I told him that I felt like I had no privacy, that he was posting too many personal moments, and that I didn't want to be part of a public spectacle. But when I did, he just shrugged it off. He couldn't understand why I was upset. I just wanted to share you with the world, he said. You're perfect, and I want everyone to see how beautiful you are. I couldn't believe it. How could he not get it? It wasn't about sharing moments. It was about control. The more I tried to talk to him, the more defensive he became. He acted like I was overreacting, that I should be grateful he thought it was so perfect that everyone needed to see it. I told him I wanted him to take the pictures down, to remove anything that felt too personal. He promised he would, but every time I checked, they were still there. He kept posting new ones too. Every time we went out, there were more pictures of me, eating at a restaurant, walking down the street, even laughing with my friends. He wasn't just sharing moments anymore. He was building a narrative about me, one where I had no say in how I was portrayed. I thought about deleting my accounts, but it wasn't just about the photos anymore. It was about the feeling that I wasn't in control of my own life anymore. I didn't know how to get out of this situation without looking crazy. Every time I tried to tell him how uncomfortable it made me, he would brush it off like it was nothing. You're just being paranoid, he'd say. You don't want people to know how amazing you are. It felt like he was twisting everything. Like the more I pushed for my own privacy, the more he turned it into a personal attack. I started feeling like I was suffocating, like he was pulling the strings of my life without ever asking for my opinion. There were times when I tried to erase the pictures from my phone, but he'd already posted them on his accounts. When I blocked him on social media, I'd check and see that his friends were tagging me in pictures that were taken without my permission. It was like he had a hold on my entire online presence, even when I wasn't around. One day, I decided to visit his house while he was out to grab a few things. I didn't expect it to be anything unusual. When I went into his room, I found something that made my heart drop. There on his desk were printed photos of me. Some were from the pictures he posted, others from moments I had never even realized he was snapping. The one that made me freeze was a photo of me from the night we went to a wedding, taken from across the room, showing me laughing at something one of my friends said. It was one of the most intimate moments I'd had with my friends, and here it was, printed out and framed like some kind of trophy. It was then I realized that this wasn't about love or admiration. This was about him controlling my narrative. He was taking pieces of my life, creating a version of me that fit his ideal, and showing it off to anyone who would look. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to leave, but leaving wasn't easy. Paul didn't understand why I was upset, and the more I tried to distance myself, the more he clung. He'd show up at my house uninvited, telling me he just wanted to talk about how perfect everything was between us. It didn't feel like love anymore. It felt like manipulation. I had to cut ties completely. I had to block him, delete everything, and take control of my own life again. It took a while to get the photos off my accounts in my phone, but I did it. And the whole time I wondered, how did I let it get this far? How did I let someone control my life like that? I'm still trying to move on from the feeling of being watched all the time, but it's hard. I never expected my privacy to be so easily stolen. I never expected someone I trusted to turn my life into a story they could control. I thought it was going to be just another normal day. I mean, a family gathering. Sure, we'd been dating for a couple of months, but I wasn't expecting anything weird. Yusuf had always been sweet to me, funny, kind, easy to talk to. and when he invited me to meet his family, I was excited. It seemed like the next logical step. After all, meeting the family is a big deal, right? I figured if things were going well between us, meeting his parents and sister would just make everything more real. So I showed up at his house thinking it was just going to be a regular dinner. His house was nice, cozy, with the smell of homemade food filling the air. His parents greeted me at the door with warm smiles, almost as if they'd known me for years. His mom hugged me, saying she'd heard so much about me and was so excited to finally meet me. His dad shook my hand and welcomed me in like I was already part of the family. It felt good at first. I mean, it was nice to feel accepted so quickly. His sister, though, she had a bit of a strange energy about her. She didn't hug me or anything, but she gave me this smile that seemed a little too knowing. She kept saying things like, "We've been waiting for you, and it's so great you could finally join us." It was as if she already knew everything about me, even though I had only been dating Yusuf for a few months. I didn't think much of it at first. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, or maybe they were just really close-knit and super welcoming. The evening went on, and everything seemed fine. We had dinner, talked about random stuff, laughed a lot, and they asked me all sorts of questions about my life, my family, my work. It felt normal at first, but the more time I spent there, the more I started to feel like something wasn't quite right. It was subtle, but the more they spoke, the more it felt like they had already planned for me to be in their lives forever. The weirdest part, it was the way they all acted like they had known me for ages. At one point, Yusuf's mom casually mentioned how she loved my taste in music, like she'd already heard me talk about it. His dad asked me how work was going, as if we had several conversations about it before. And his sister kept making comments like, "You two are so perfect together," as if she had seen us together for years, not just a few months. Every time I'd ask how they knew these things, they'd just brush it off, saying, "We know our son really well," or "We've heard a lot about you." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about it. After dinner, Yusuf's sister and I were sitting in the living room chatting about random things. It wasn't until then that I overheard something that made my stomach drop. She was talking to her mom, not realizing I was still in earshot, and she mentioned something about a wedding date in front of everyone. I froze. Wedding? I hadn't even thought about that with Yusuf. I mean, I liked him, but we hadn't even had a serious talk about the future yet. I tried to brush it off, telling myself maybe it was just a slip of the tongue. But then I noticed how they all seemed so calm and confident about it. It was like they had already assumed that this was what was going to happen, like I was already going to marry Yusuf, like it was a done deal. I tried to shake it off, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just the wedding talk that was strange. When Yusuf and I were alone later, I tried to ask him about it. I just had to know what was going on. I wasn't angry, just confused. Why were they acting like this was all planned out already? His response, though, wasn't what I expected. He just shrugged and said, "My family is just really excited to meet you. They've been looking forward to this for a while." He didn't seem to get it, or maybe he just wasn't taking me seriously. I felt the blood rush to my face, but I didn't say anything right away. I was starting to feel trapped in this situation where nothing seemed to belong to me anymore. I was trying to figure out if this was some weird family tradition, or if they had some grand plan for me that I hadn't signed up for. But then Yusuf casually dropped something that made everything even more unsettling. He told me with the most nonchalant tone that he had already planned our future together. That we're going to get married, have kids, live in this house, the whole thing. And he didn't even ask me what I thought about it. I stood there, frozen, not sure how to react. I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't invested in the relationship. I cared about him. But this was too much, too soon. I tried to explain that we hadn't even talked about those things yet, but he just looked at me like I was the one who was being unreasonable. He said things like, "I know we're meant to be together, and I've already talked to my parents about our future." It was clear that in his mind, this was already set in stone, and I was just supposed to go along with it. But it didn't feel like a partnership. It felt like a setup. Everything about this, from the way his family acted to the way he spoke, was about making sure we followed the script they'd already written for us. The more I tried to talk to him about it, the more he seemed dismissive, like he wasn't hearing what I was saying. It was like he had this vision of our life together, and I wasn't even invited to make any decisions about it. His family wasn't helping either. They were still talking like everything was already decided, like they had already planned my life for me. I couldn't stay there much longer. I had to leave. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore, where everything felt like carefully orchestrated play. I needed to step back and figure out if I was just overreacting or if this was really something I needed to get away from. I don't know what's going to happen now. I haven't heard from Yusuf much. And every time I think about him, I feel this heavy weight. The more I replay that night in my head, the more I realize that maybe I wasn't just meeting his family. I was being pulled into a life I never agreed to, and I don't know how to get out. I had never been on a date like this before. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had awkward first dates, but this one was different. It was a kind of date that made me feel like I was stuck in a nightmare where everything that could go wrong did. It all started when I matched with Mary on a dating app. She was cute, and we hit it off immediately in our messages. She had this energy that made it feel like we had known each other for a while, like one of those old school romances. I was intrigued. We talked about everything from movies to our childhoods, and it felt easy. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first. She suggested we meet at a cozy little cafe in town, which I thought was a great idea. It was one of those places with soft lighting, a warm atmosphere, and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. As soon as I walked in, I saw her sitting at a table near the window. She was pretty in that down-to-earth way, nothing too flashy, but she had this sort of grace about her. The conversation was flowing as we ordered our drinks, laughing about how neither of us could choose what to get. At first, it felt like the perfect date. We shared some funny stories, talked about our families, and even joked around about our weird hobbies. But then, as the night wore on, something started to feel off. She started talking about her beliefs. Now, I'm not the kind of person who judges others based on religion. I mean, everyone has their own way of seeing the world. I respect that. But as she dove deeper into her Catholic faith, I started to feel like I was being pulled into something I wasn't prepared for. She told me how important her faith was to her, how it guided every decision in her life. At first, I just nodded, listened, and tried to be respectful. But then it took a strange turn. She told me that she couldn't be with someone who wasn't Catholic. I didn't think much of it at first. I assumed she was just talking about how her faith was central to her, like a lot of people do. But as she kept talking, I realized this wasn't just a suggestion. It was a demand. She didn't just want me to be open-minded about her beliefs. No, she wanted me to convert. The way she said it wasn't harsh, but it was clear. It was like it wasn't even a choice in her eyes. She told me that she would only be truly happy if I shared her faith, that she couldn't be with someone who didn't believe in the same thing she did. At first, I thought I misheard her. I mean, we had only just met. Who on earth would ask someone they'd barely knew to change their entire belief system for them? But she wasn't joking. Her eyes locked with mine, and she was dead serious. I was starting to feel uncomfortable. This wasn't what I had signed up for. I came here to get to know her, not to be pressured into something so personal. I'm not a religious guy. I was raised in a family where we were more spiritual than devout, but I wasn't committed to any particular faith. And while I respected her right to believe what she believed, I wasn't about to change who I was just because she thought it was necessary for us to be together. She didn't seem to get that, though. She started explaining, almost pleading with me, that it wasn't just about religion. It was about our future. She said we couldn't build a life together if I wasn't on the same page as her in terms of faith. It was almost like she was already imagining us as a couple of years down the road, with kids living in a house with a little white picket fence. And it seemed like my non-belief was a deal breaker. I'm the kind of person who likes to make my own decisions, and being told that I had to convert to something I wasn't even sure about really started to irritate me. I told her that I respected her beliefs, but that I wasn't going to just change who I was for anyone. She got quiet for a moment, but it wasn't a comfortable silence. There was something tense in the air, like she was calculating her next move. She kept pushing, though. She didn't drop it. She even brought up how important it was for our souls and how being Catholic was the only way to truly find happiness, or some spiel like that. It was starting to feel less like a date and more like a lecture. At this point, I was getting frustrated. I wanted to walk out, but I didn't want to be rude. The whole time I kept thinking, am I really sitting here being told that my whole worldview needs to be rewritten because of a first date? I don't know what she thought would happen, but I wasn't just going to cave to someone I barely knew. But then she started talking about how if I really cared about her, I would be willing to try. She didn't even acknowledge the fact that what she was asking was, well, kind of insane. It wasn't just about the religion. It was about control. She wasn't offering me a chance to explore her world. She was trying to pull me into it with no regard for who I was or what I believed. I think that's when I realized how messed up this whole situation was. This wasn't a relationship. This was a power struggle, and I had zero interest in being a part of it. The rest of the date was awkward. She kept dropping hints about me visiting her church, about how I would see the light if I just gave a chance. At this point, I was barely listening. I was just nodding along trying to get through the night. When the bill came, I paid quickly, even though I wasn't really in the mood for any more small talk. We said our goodbyes, and she hugged me a little too tightly, like she was trying to hold on to something that wasn't there. I didn't know what to say, so I just told her I had a good time, even though I couldn't have felt more opposite. I haven't heard from her since that night, and honestly, I'm not sure if I'll ever reach out again. It's not that I don't respect her beliefs, but the way she tried to pressure me into changing for her. Yeah, no thanks. If that's what a relationship with her would have been like, I'm better off alone. So, yeah, that was the first and last date with Mary. It was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I've ever had, and it's definitely one of those nights I won't forget. It was supposed to be a normal first date, the kind where you meet someone new, grab a drink, talk about movies, maybe laugh a bit, and see if there's some spark. But instead of the typical guy in a hoodie or a nice button up, I got Sean. And Sean was wearing a full on Batman costume. I swear, I couldn't make this stuff up. It was a warm Friday evening when we were supposed to meet. We had been texting for a few days after meeting on a dating app. He seemed cool enough in the messages, funny, into the same kind of music, and super easy to talk to. We had had a good back and forth about superheroes. Honestly, I thought we had a pretty good connection. So when he suggested meeting at a local bar, I was in. I mean, what could go wrong, right? So there I was, sitting at the bar, a little early as usual, waiting for him to show up. The place was decent, not too crowded, just a good spot for a first date. The lights were dim, the chatter of people mixed with soft music in the background. I was sipping my drink, checking my phone when I saw him. At first, I thought he was just wearing a Batman themed t shirt or something. A little nerdy, but okay, that's cute. But no, this guy was fully dressed as Batman, cape and all, looking like he had just stepped off a movie set. The only thing missing was the Batmobile. My first thought was, oh no, what is going on? I watched him walk in, his boots clacking on the floor, his cape swishing behind him like he was ready to fight crime. He wasn't wearing a mask, which at least I was grateful for, but the rest of the outfit was absolutely ridiculous. I had no idea what to do. Should I laugh? Should I ask if he's okay? Should I just turn around and pretend I never saw him? Instead, I just kind of froze for a second, hoping he wouldn't come over. But of course he did. He stood in front of me, his arms out wide in that Batman pose like he was about to take off and soar through the night sky. I think he even tried to make some dramatic entrance, like he was announcing his arrival with flair. But I couldn't stop staring. His costume was all shiny and new, like he had put a lot of time into getting it just right, and I could see the seams of it stretching in places that seemed weirdly out of place. For a second, I couldn't even speak. I just blinked at him, trying to process what was happening. I mean, we'd all joke about wearing ridiculous costumes for Halloween, but this was way beyond that. This was serious. Sean seemed pretty comfortable in his getup, though. He didn't seem the least bit self-conscious. He even waved his hand like a superhero and said, "Hey, I'm here to save the night." I didn't know if I should laugh or just walk out, but I decided to at least sit through the date. Maybe it was one of those things where once you get past the weirdness, you can see the person behind the costume. So I smiled and told him it was cool, trying my best not to sound totally freaked out. I could feel my face turning red with embarrassment, not because of me, but because of him. It wasn't even that I hated Batman. I loved Batman, but this just wasn't the time or place. He ordered a drink, his deep voice doing this Batman-ish growl. Every time he spoke, I kind of half wanted to laugh, but then I'd remember that I was on a date, and I should probably at least try to be polite. We sat down at the bar, and he immediately started talking about how he had spent weeks putting the costume together. Apparently, he was super into Batman and loved the idea of embodying a character who was both dark and heroic. He kept telling me how real the costume felt when he wore it, how it gave him a sense of power, of being someone else for a while. As he spoke, his hands would move in exaggerated gestures, like he was giving a lecture on why Batman was the greatest superhero ever. At some point, I realized I was zoning out a bit. I could barely focus on what he was saying, and all I could think about was how out of place he looked. It wasn't that I didn't like him. He was actually a pretty interesting guy underneath the whole superhero thing. But I couldn't help but feel like he was wearing a mask literally and figuratively. Was this how he saw himself? Was he trying to impress me with a costume that seemed more like a defense mechanism than anything? After a few minutes, I decided I had to say something. Not that I wanted to hurt his feelings, but I couldn't keep pretending this wasn't weird. Sean, you know this is a bar, right? I said, trying to keep it light. You're dressed as Batman, like Batman. I mean, it's kind of bold. He looked at me, a little confused for a second, and then he smiled. Yeah, I guess it is a bit much, but hey, I'm here to have fun. Why not be my true self, right? The way he said it so confidently kind of made me feel bad for questioning it. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the weird feeling that was starting to creep in. I tried to brush it off, but the rest of the date just felt off. Every time he moved or talked, his cape would swish loudly, and I couldn't help but wonder if anyone else in the bar thought it was as weird as I did. At one point, I looked around, and yeah, people were staring. I kept telling myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just a quirky thing he did, and I shouldn't judge him for it. But after a while, I started feeling less like I was on a date and more like I was in some weird, surreal play where nothing made sense. We ended the night with a weird hug. He held it a little longer than usual, like he thought he was still in character. He walked away with this Batman strut, and I just kind of stood there, unsure of what had just happened. Was he really trying to impress me with a cosplay? Did he think this was cute, or was it something deeper than that? It's been a few weeks since that night, and I still think about it. I haven't seen Sean again. I'm not sure if I want to. I still don't know if he was trying to be funny, if he genuinely believed his Batman persona would win me over, or if there was something else going on with him. But either way, I'm still not sure if it was a joke, a performance, or if he just wasn't ready to show me who he really was. I guess I'll never know. I didn't know what to think when it first happened. Honestly, I thought I was getting pranked. Like, there's no way a girl you're on a date with could do something so weird and it'd be completely normal, right? But that's exactly what happened when I went on a date with Lola. And now, months later, I can't even imagine my life without it. But let me tell you how this all started. It was a Saturday afternoon when I met Lola. A friend had set us up, telling me she was cool, chill, and down to earth. We met at a cafe, one of those places with the quirky, mismatched chairs and vintage-looking decor. You know, the kind that's supposed to give off cool indie vibes, but is just a little too forced. Anyway, I was there early, sipping my iced coffee, trying to calm my nerves. You know how it is when you're meeting someone new. There's always that little voice in your head wondering what they're going to be like. When Lola walked in, she was cute. Not in an overly done up way, but in this effortlessly cool, I don't need to try too hard way. She had this kind of calm energy about her, and she smiled a lot. We talked, got along instantly, and the conversation flowed. She was funny, smart, and had a way of making everything feel easy. We ended up walking around the city after we finished our coffee, talking about all kinds of things. But as the night went on, something strange happened. At first, it was subtle. Lola would laugh and kind of inch closer to me every time I stopped walking, like we were just getting comfortable, but then at one point, she bent down to adjust her shoes. As she did, I caught her smelling my socks. Yep, you heard me right. She just straight up sniffed my socks like it was the most normal thing to do. I froze. I didn't know how to react. It was such an odd thing to witness. I thought maybe she was just messing around or that it was some sort of joke I wasn't getting. But no, she just kept sniffing them like she was enjoying it. I couldn't even focus on what she was saying afterward because I was just thinking, what the hell? Naturally, I didn't ask her about it. I didn't even bring it up the whole rest of the date. The weirdest part was that after she did it, she seemed completely normal, like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. We kept walking, chatting about random stuff, and honestly, I was just trying to get my head around what just occurred. I'd never seen someone do that before. I definitely didn't know how to process it, but I couldn't shake the thought, is this normal for her? We ended the date with a casual goodbye. No weirdness, no awkward tension, just a kiss on the cheek and her telling me she'd love to see me again. Honestly, I had no idea if I wanted to see her again, just because the sock sniffing thing had left me so confused. I kept replaying it in my head, like, did I just imagine that? Was that a one-time thing? I ended up texting her the next day. I told her I had a good time, and we agreed to meet up again a few days later. When we did, things felt normal again. But then it happened. The sock sniffing. She did it again, and this time, I could tell it wasn't an accident. She wasn't just fixing her shoes. It was deliberate. She made a joke about how my socks smelled fresh or something. I didn't even know what to say. I mean, I had just gotten off work, so I wasn't exactly fresh from the laundry. But she seemed to be completely into it. At that point, I figured I had two choices: freak out and end things right then, or just go with it. I went with it. At first, I felt super weird about it, but over time, it started to seem kind of sweet, I guess. It was like she had this really quirky habit that was just a part of who she was. Every time we hung out, I'd catch her doing it again, and each time, I found myself less weirded out. I began to realize that she wasn't doing it to make me uncomfortable. She was doing it because it made her happy, and it was just this bizarre little thing she did. It became a pattern. She'd come over, we'd hang out, and then eventually she'd give my socks a sniff. At first, I'd think, what is my life right now? But eventually, I started to look forward to it. It became this weird, quirky thing between us. I don't know if that makes sense, but it did. She'd laugh, and I'd laugh, and it was like this secret little habit we had. It wasn't sexual or anything like that. It was just something Lola did. I'd ask her about it once, kind of half joking, and she told me that she'd always been like that. She loved the way her partner's socks smelled, especially after they'd been walking around it all day. And somehow I got it. It was like a comfort thing for her. I think that was the moment I realized that this wasn't just some weird one-off habit. It was a part of who she was, and honestly, it made me like her even more. There was this honesty to her, this complete lack of self-consciousness, and I thought it was kind of beautiful. Over time, I got used to it. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say I looked forward to it. It wasn't about the socks, really. It was about the little quirks that made Lola, well, Lola. And now we're still dating. Still doing the whole sock sniffing thing. I'm not sure how to explain it. It sounds insane when I tell people, and I guess most people would think I'm crazy for putting up with it. But there's something about it that works. There's something kind of endearing about it. She's not ashamed of who she is, and that's something I admire. So yeah, I'm still dating Lola. I guess if you've got a habit of sniffing socks, I'm just the guy for you. It might be strange to most, but I've learned that sometimes it's the weird things that make life interesting. Would I ever have thought I'd be in a relationship where my socks were getting sniffed on a regular basis? No. But here I am, and we're both happy. Sometimes the weird stuff is what makes us who we are. And for now, I'm totally cool with it. I'll never forget that night. Honestly, it's the kind of night you look back on and wonder how in the hell you didn't walk away sooner. It all started pretty normal, like any other date, but by the end of it, I realized I'd walked into something way worse than I could have ever imagined. So let me backtrack a bit. It was one of those nights where I just felt like going out and doing something. It'd been a long week of work, and I was ready to relax. A friend of mine suggested hitting up this local bar she knew. Nothing fancy, just a low-key place where you could get a drink, chill, and listen to some music. I didn't have any plans that night, so I figured why not. That's where I met John. I remember him because he was a guy who looked like he was just out of a movie. Tall, dark hair, a bit of a rough around the edges vibe. We got to talking. At first, it was pretty normal. I didn't think much of it, just the usual small talk. He was funny, easy to talk to, and didn't seem like the kind of guy who'd make you feel uncomfortable. He had this charm about him, which made it easy to relax. Plus, he seemed like the type who was confident, not cocky, and that's always a good sign. We ended up hanging out for a while, chatting, laughing, just kind of vibing with the music playing in the background. And then, out of nowhere, something happened. John stood up, grabbed his drink, and walked over to a group of guys at the bar. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I saw him getting into some kind of argument. At first, it was just words being exchanged. Nothing crazy, just a bit of back and forth. But then it got loud. One of the guys in the group was pointing at John, and the next thing I knew, they were shoving each other. I thought, okay, maybe it's just a minor scuffle. But it wasn't. It escalated quickly. One punch, and then another, and it was like everything went into slow motion. The whole bar started to watch as John and this guy went at it, fists flying. It was wild. The bartender rushed over to break it up, but the two of them were still swinging, pushing, and shoving. I was honestly frozen in place, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. People were yelling, others were pulling out their phones, recording the whole thing. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to walk away, but I couldn't stop staring. It wasn't just a fight, it was pure chaos. I kept waiting for someone to intervene, for the bouncers to step in, but it felt like everything was happening too fast. The whole scene was a blur of motion, loud music, and shouts. But in the middle of it all, John looked like he was enjoying it. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like he wasn't scared or panicked. It was like he thrived on the chaos, like he was right where he wanted to be. After what felt like an eternity, the fight broke up. The guy John had been fighting with was escorted out by the bouncers, but John was still standing there, all riled up, like he had just won some kind of battle. He came back to the table, his knuckles bruised and bloodied. I was in shock, my head was spinning. He just sat back down, acting like nothing had happened, and started talking about how the other guy had it coming. I didn't know what to say, but I knew I couldn't ignore what I just witnessed. But he didn't seem fazed. He was laughing about it, talking like it was just some normal thing for him, like getting into fistfights was part of his weekly routine. At that point, I should have just called it quits and left. I should have gotten up, paid for my drink, and walked out of there. But I didn't. I sat there trying to make sense of what had just happened. He seemed so different from the guy I'd been talking to earlier. He wasn't the same guy who'd been making me laugh at the table. Now he was almost dangerous, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt I was sitting next to a completely different person. We kept talking, but the whole mood had changed. I was no longer interested in the conversation. I was just waiting for the night to be over. He kept telling me how people just didn't know how to respect him, and how he had to teach them a lesson when they crossed the line. It was unsettling, to say the least. The more he talked, the more I realized that this wasn't just a random outburst. This was part of who he was. The night dragged on, and I kept thinking about leaving, but something about the whole situation had me paralyzed. Maybe it was because I didn't know how to handle it. Maybe it was because I was afraid of what would happen if I just got up and walked away. But I stayed. Eventually, the bar started to empty out. The energy was different now, quieter, like the fight had sucked the life out of the place. John seemed to have calmed down too, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the whole night had been some sort of performance for him, like he needed to prove something. When we said goodbye, I didn't feel relieved. I felt uneasy. It wasn't even that I was scared, but something in me knew I shouldn't be around him. It was like the guy I'd talked to for hours wasn't the same guy I'd just watched get into a fight. I should have trusted my gut and ended it right then, but I didn't. The next day, I had a text from him asking if I wanted to meet up again. My first instinct was to ignore it, to pretend the whole night never happened. But for some reason, I found myself thinking about it. The fight, the way he acted, how casually violent he seemed. I kept reading his message over and over, trying to figure out if I was overreacting. In the end, I didn't reply. I didn't need to see him again, and I didn't want to. I felt like I'd dodged a bullet. There are some things people can't hide, like how they react when everything goes wrong. And in that moment, John had shown me who he really was. He wasn't someone I wanted to be around. I'd seen enough. So, yeah, that was my date with John. A fight, some blood, and a feeling that I didn't belong there at all. It was probably the weirdest and most unsettling date I've ever been on. I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know where to start with this one. It wasn't the craziest day I've been on, but looking back, it was definitely one of the weirdest. You know, the kind of thing where you're standing there wondering if you're being pranked or if you're just the most unlucky person on the planet. It's the type of date that makes you question everything, including your judgment and what the hell went wrong in your decision-making process. So, here's how it started. I met Natasha through a mutual friend. Nothing too serious, just a couple of texts here and there. She was cute, pretty chill, and had this kind of quirky vibe to her that I thought was refreshing. We'd been texting for a little over a week before we decided to meet up for a coffee. At first, I was stoked. She seemed like someone I could actually talk to. We planned the whole thing out, coffee at this little cafe I know that has these amazing croissants and a really relaxed atmosphere. The kind of place where you can sit for hours without feeling rushed. The day came and everything seemed normal. I showed a little early because I'm always kind of paranoid about being late. I settled into a table at a window, scrolling through my phone when Natasha walked in. She had this little arm sling on her right arm, and it was obvious that she'd recently broken it. The moment she sat down, she apologized, saying she'd just gotten into a pretty bad accident. I didn't really press her for details. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, right? People break bones all the time. I tried to make her feel comfortable, talking about anything and everything to keep the mood light. But even then, there was something off. She was a little too quiet, a little too still. We started talking about random stuff, the usual get to know you chatter, and the conversation was going fine until she mentioned her medical bills. I remember her saying something like, "It's been so tough, medical bills piling up, and my insurance doesn't cover everything." At that point, I didn't really think much of it. I mean, she was just venting, right? People vent when they're stressed. But then she started going into more detail about how her hospital visit had left her financially drained. She explained how it was a tough situation because she didn't have the money to pay everything off right away. I nodded, trying to be supportive, but I was also starting to feel like this wasn't exactly a normal coffee date conversation. I'm not sure when it happened, but somewhere between the latte and the awkward silences, Nasha made a suggestion. No, scratch that. It wasn't even a suggestion. It was more of a demand that came so casually, so nonchalantly, that I didn't even know how to process it at first. She said, since you're here and we're getting to know each other, maybe you could help me out with the medical bills. I mean, I don't expect a lot, but you seem like a good guy and it really needs some help. Wait, what? My brain went into overdrive. I wasn't sure if I was misunderstanding what she was asking or if this was just some weird joke that she was pulling on me. She couldn't be serious, right? We'd been on one date, one coffee meetup, and now she was asking me to help pay her medical bills. The thing is, Nasha wasn't asking for a loan or for a couple $100 to tide her over for a few days. She was talking about thousands of dollars. She wanted me to pay for the whole thing, or at least a large chunk of it. The way she talked about it, it was as if it was the most normal request in the world. Like, sure, why not? We'd known each other for all of what, a week? I think I just froze. I didn't know what to say. I kept staring at her, trying to figure out if she was serious, if this was some kind of test, or if she was just going to start laughing and tell me it was all a joke. But the more she talked, the more I realized she wasn't joking. She wasn't even remotely joking. She was dead serious, sitting there like we were in the middle of some business transaction. I didn't know how to respond. I mean, who asks someone they'd barely know to pay their medical bills? It wasn't just a weird situation, it was a disturbing one. She didn't seem embarrassed or awkward about it. She wasn't apologetic. It was as if she was just casually mentioning, "Oh, by the way, I could use some money. Can you help?" I tried to get my thoughts together, but honestly, I couldn't even figure out how to decline. I didn't want to be rude, but at the same time, I felt like I had to say something. I finally stammered out something about how we'd only just met, and that it was a little much for me to help out financially so soon, but she just kind of waved it off. "No, I get it," she said, "but think about it. You wouldn't really mind, would you? I mean, you're a nice guy. You can't help, right?" The pressure in her voice started to climb. It was like she was manipulating me into feeling guilty for not agreeing. She was so persistent. And at this point, I was starting to feel uncomfortable, trapped almost. She wasn't backing off, and it felt like if I said no again, she'd get offended or make me feel like a jerk. After what felt like an eternity of her pushing, I managed to get out of there. I made some excuse about needing to go meet up with friends or something, and she didn't argue. She just smiled like she'd won something. I left the cafe with my heart pounding, my mind racing. What just happened? Did that seriously just happen? I couldn't stop thinking about it the whole night. I kept going over our conversation in my head, replaying it again and again, wondering how the hell someone could ask a complete stranger for money like that. What kind of person does that? And the worst part, I didn't even think she was joking. I think she honestly believed I would pay. I didn't hear from Natasha after that, not for a while at least. A few days later, she sent a text asking if I was still thinking about helping her out. I just ignored it. It was the last thing I wanted to get involved with. I don't know what her deal was, but I wasn't about to get sucked into some weird money scheme. Looking back, I still don't get it. The whole thing felt like some twisted test, like she was seeing how far she could push someone. I don't know if she thought I'd just roll over and hand her the cash or what, but I'm glad I didn't fall for it. Sometimes I wonder if I dodged a bullet. Maybe she was just desperate, but either way, I'm not going to be anyone's ATM just because I went on a coffee date. It's been a while since that day, and I still can't stop thinking about how bizarre it all was. It started like any other date. A normal evening, a cute guy, and a quick bite at a cozy restaurant down the street. The kind of casual meetup that's supposed to be light and fun, where you're not overthinking anything. You know, the kind of date where you don't expect anything weird to happen. At least that's what I thought. I met Brian on a dating app, and we had talked a few times before deciding to finally meet up. He seemed like the typical guy at first, charming, easy to talk to, always asking about my day, making me laugh. He even seemed to have an appreciation for the little things that matter to me, like how I've always been really close to my dog, Luna. I talk about Luna a lot, probably more than most people talk about their pets, but she's not just a dog to me. She's like family. So naturally, I told Brian about Luna early on in our chats. She's a black lab mix, always full of energy, always running around. I knew I probably sounded a bit obsessive about her, but I didn't mind. Brian seemed to get it. He'd share cute dog pictures with me, and I'd send him updates on Luna's latest antics. I remember him mentioning he had a dog when we first started talking too, though he didn't go into much detail about it. Anyway, back to the date. The restaurant we went to was small and kind of quiet, perfect for getting to know each other. We sat by the window, the streetlights outside casting a soft glow. Everything felt casual at first, and I'll admit I was enjoying myself. Brian had a way of making me feel comfortable, like we were already longtime friends. It was easy to laugh, easy to talk. The conversation flowed. But then, as the night went on, I started to notice something strange. The way his eyes kept darting at my phone. It was subtle, but it kept happening. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming he was just distracted or something. But then he started asking a lot of questions. At first, it was about Luna, of course. He was always curious about her, asking what she liked, what she hated, and where she usually went on walks. But then the questions became more detailed. He asked about my routine with her, what time I fed her, and if I ever took her to the park alone. It seemed harmless enough, but I started feeling uncomfortable. It wasn't just the questions themselves, it was the way he asked them. There was a strange intensity in his voice, like he was more interested in Luna than in me. I brushed it off. Maybe he was just trying to connect with me, right? Then things took a turn when the waiter brought our food. I was just about to take a bite of my pasta when Brian said, I've always liked dogs. More than people, honestly. I didn't know what to say, so I laughed off. But then, without missing a beat, he added, I think I actually love your dog more than I could ever love you. It took a moment to process what he had said. Did he just? I stared at him, unsure how to react. He wasn't joking. There was no laugh, no smile. He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. My stomach dropped. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was just overthinking it. But the weird feeling only grew as the night went on. We finished dinner and he insisted on walking me home. I agreed, thinking it might ease the tension I was starting to feel. As we walked, I couldn't help but notice how quiet he was. He wasn't really talking anymore. His eyes were glued to the ground as we walked down the empty street. And then, just as we reached my apartment, Brian turned to me. Hey, do you mind if I come in for a second? He asked, his voice low. I hesitated for a second, but I figured it wouldn't hurt. I knew him by now. We'd talked for a while, and he seemed harmless enough. But as soon as the door closed behind us, everything changed. He was no longer the guy I had been talking to. He was different. He looked almost desperate, like he was searching for something. And when I turned around to head to my living room, I saw him looking straight at Luna's bed, his eyes wide. Where is she? He asked, his voice tight. It hit me then, the thing I had been too distracted to realize earlier. Brian had never once asked about me outside of Luna. He didn't care about what I liked or what I thought. He cared about my dog, only my dog. I felt a chill run down my spine. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to see her, he said, his voice now trembling. Where is she? Where's your dog? I felt a pang of fear in my chest. She's not here right now, I said quickly. She's at my friend's place for the night. But he wasn't listening. His eyes were frantic, darting around the room as if he expected to find her hiding somewhere. I know she's here. I just want to see her. I love her. I stepped back, my heart racing. This wasn't normal. This wasn't some harmless crush or fascination. There was something seriously wrong. I think you need to leave, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But Brian wasn't listening. He kept coming closer, his movements jerky, almost like he couldn't control himself. I love her more than you. You know that, he muttered, his voice low and almost frantic. I love her. She's the only one who matters. I need her. And that's when I realized he didn't just want to see her, he wanted her. I backed up into the wall, my pulse pounding in my ears. My thoughts raced. What the hell was going on? This wasn't just some weird obsession. It was something darker. He wasn't just obsessed with Luna. He was obsessed with me in a way I didn't understand. Before I could react, he was gone, darting out the door. I stood there for a long time, frozen, not sure what just happened. I immediately texted my friend to check on Luna, and when she called back, she confirmed that Luna was safe, but the fear that had gripped me that night never left. Brian didn't show up the next day, or the day after that, but I never forgot the look in his eyes, that desperate, obsessive stare. He'd said himself he loved my dog more than me. I didn't know if he meant it as a joke or not, but it didn't matter. Something in him had snapped, and I wasn't sure what he'd do next. And honestly, I didn't want to find out. To this day, I can't look at Luna without wondering if I'll ever have to deal with him again.